The storm had barely begun when Nadira froze at the entrance of the orphanage hall, her breath slicing short and sharp in her chest. Children were lining up for donated blankets, caretakers rushing around, chaotic, loud, overwhelming. But in the center of that chaos stood one small boy. His wide eyes were fixed on her, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment, and for her. The world around Nadira dissolved. Her legs trembled. That face, those eyes, those dimples when he inhaled sharply. It was impossible. It was unbearable. It was him, Jabari, her only son, the child she buried 3 years ago. Before she could even blink away the tears burning her vision, the boy broke into a run. Straight toward her, and then voice-shaking, breath quivering, he whispered the word that shattered the air. "Mama, I found you." His small body collapsed into her arms, as if his strength had run out the moment he recognized her. Where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? If this story has already pulled you in, feel free to subscribe for more powerful African folktale dramas. Nadira could still feel the weight of the boy's small body against her as she sat in the orphanage's dimly lit waiting room, hands trembling on her lap. Moments earlier, a nurse had rushed in, lifted the unconscious boy from her arms, and carried him to the infirmary. The echoes of his words, "Mama, I found you," still rang through her skull, like a bell refusing to quiet. She hadn't breathed properly since. Her heart thrashed against her ribs, begging for an answer she was too terrified to confront. It can't be him. It can't. But the image of the boy's face kept shattering every bit of her denial. He looked exactly like Jabari at that age. Same almond-shaped eyes, the soft curl of his lashes, the tiny dent in his chin that she used to kiss every night. A soft knock broke through her thoughts. The door cracked open, and Miss Lulika, the orphanage director, stepped inside. Her expression was tight, polite, strained, like someone trying to keep a door shut against a storm. "You must be Nadira," she said, gently folding her hands before her. "I'm told the boy ran straight to you." "That is unusual." Nadira swallowed hard, her throat raw. "Where is he now?" "He's resting," Lulika replied quickly. Too quickly, probably overwhelmed. Some of our children faint when they get overly excited. "This wasn't excitement," Nadira whispered. "He knew me. He recognized me." Lulika's gaze flickered just for a breath. Children project emotions sometimes. They see someone kind, and no, Nadira cut in, shaking her head. "He called me Mama." Another flicker in the director's eyes, this time sharper. Nadira stepped forward. "What's his name?" Zuhair, Lulika replied. The name meant nothing to Nadira. Her heart twisted painfully, hope and dread tangling like thorns. "And how long has he been here?" Nadira pressed. 3 years, the woman said. Nadira's pulse stopped. 3 years. The exact amount of time since Jabari died. Her knees weakened. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. Her voice cracked. "Where did he come from?" "We don't have full details," Luleka answered, clearing her throat. "He was found outside a clinic. No relatives. No paperwork." "So you have nothing on him?" Nadira's voice rose. Luleka stiffened. "We do what we can with the information we receive. But some children simply arrive without history." Nadira's chest ached. Tears blurred her vision. "I lost my son 3 years ago," she whispered, "and that boy looks exactly like him." The director's face softened, but Nadira couldn't tell whether it was real or professional sympathy. "I am very sorry for your loss," Luleka said quietly, "but physical resemblance between children does happen. Trauma can distort perception." Nadira felt heat rise under her skin, anger mixed with grief and desperation. "Are you telling me I imagined what happened?" "Not imagined," Lulika replied smoothly, "just emotionally overwhelmed." Before Nadira could respond, the door swung open again. A young caretaker hurried in. "Ma'am, the boy is awake." She turned to Nadira. "He's asking for you." Nadira's heart plummeted. She followed the caretaker down a narrow hallway, smelling faintly of antiseptic and damp wood. Her steps were unsteady, each one stealing her breath. She was terrified, not of the boy, but of what seeing him again might confirm, or destroy. The infirmary door opened with a soft creak. There he was, sitting on a small cot, legs dangling, hands clenched nervously around the edge of the mattress. His eyes lifted, and the moment they met hers, they softened, brightened, trembled, just like Jabari's had whenever she came home from work. "Mama," he whispered again. Nadira's breath collapsed. She fell to her knees beside him, cupping his cheeks with shaking hands. "Sweetheart, why do you call me that?" He blinked slowly, as if trying to gather memories from a fog. "I remember your voice," he murmured. When I was scared, you always sang to me. Her blood turned to ice. What song she whispered, barely audible. The boy took a fragile breath and began to hum. It was off-key, shaky, but unmistakable, the lullaby she wrote for Jabari when he was 1 year old. A tune only she and her son ever knew. Nadira's heart broke open. Tears streamed down her face. Her chest heaved with silent sobs. How do you know that she choked out? The boy shook his head helplessly. I don't know. I just remember feeling safe. And I remember a fire. Loud noises. Someone carrying me. I wanted to reach you, but everything went dark. Nadira's breath froze. What fire? The boy closed his eyes, trying to remember. I saw bright lights, a woman screaming. Then someone held me. Then I woke up here. None of that made sense. Jabari had not died in a fire. He died in what the hospital called a sudden medical complication. There had been no screaming, no flames, no chaos. Unless she had been lied to. A cold wave ran through her spine. Before she could ask, more footsteps echoed in the hallway. The door slid open. Lulika entered, her expression carefully neutral. I think that is enough for today, she said. The boy needs rest. Nadira turned sharply. No, he remembers things, important things. That may be, but he is still fragile. So am I, Nadira snapped, surprising even herself. And I'm not leaving until I understand why he knows things only my son could know. Lulika inhaled deeply, jaw tight. Mrs. Nadira, please. I must ask you to leave for today. Come back tomorrow. We have protocols. The only protocol I care about is finding the truth, Nadira said. Silence stretched like a blade between them. Finally, the director forced a thin smile. Tomorrow, then. Nadira leaned close to the boy and squeezed his hands. I'll come back, I promise. The boy nodded slowly. Mama, don't leave me again. Her heart cracked anew. I won't, she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. Not ever. She left the room, trembling heart, divided between the fear of false hope and the terrifying possibility that her son, her real son, was alive. As she stepped outside into the fading daylight, she felt someone watching her. A figure stood across the street, half hidden behind a lamppost. A tall man, hard eyes, familiar in a way she couldn't place. He stepped back when she looked his way, disappeared around the corner. Nadira's pulse climbed. Someone knew she had found the boy, and someone didn't want her to dig deeper. The drive home felt longer than any journey Nadira had taken in her life. The city lights flickered past her windshield in blurred streaks distorted by the tears she refused to let fall. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles paled. Every breath felt heavy, uneven, trembling with 1,000 questions she had no answers for. When she finally reached her quiet neighborhood, the air seemed heavier. The sun had slipped below the horizon, leaving behind a violet haze. Nadira stepped into her home, a place once filled with laughter, now echoing with silence. Each wall still held a memory. Each room carried a ghost. She walked straight to the living room shelf where Jabari's framed photo sat. A boy with bright eyes and a smile wide enough to light up the whole world. She lifted the frame carefully, her thumb brushing across the glass. What if it's you, she whispered, voice cracking. What if they lied to me? But the memories of that day, the hospital lights, the doctor's somber voice, the stillness of the body, she refused to accept, flooded back and made her knees buckle. She sank onto the couch, clutching the frame against her chest. Her mind replayed the boy's voice over and over. The lullaby, the faint memory of fire. The way he called her mama, not with guesswork, not with confusion, but with familiarity. It made no sense, unless something unimaginable had happened. Nadira forced herself to stand. She needed to verify every detail. She retrieved a small wooden box from her bedroom closet, the box she had kept sealed for years, the one containing Jabari's belongings from the day the hospital returned his things. She hadn't opened it since. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside lay a tiny pair of socks, a small red toy car, and a medical wristband with her son's name printed on it. She placed everything gently on the floor and stared at the items as though they might whisper answers. Her eyes drifted to a folded hospital report. She had never fully read it. She opened it now, breath catching in her throat. Subject identified by parent through clothing recognition due to severe facial injury. Her stomach dropped. She had been blinded by grief, so blinded that she accepted a body she hadn't truly seen. What did they do to you? She whispered. A sudden chill swept through the room, like a warning. She reached for her phone and dialed the hospital. After several transfers, an aging nurse reluctantly answered her questions. Yes, Jabari's case was unusual. Yes, there had been chaos after a fire broke out in a nearby ward, causing confusion and delays. No, the man who signed the release wasn't a family member. He had presented himself as someone assisting the grieving mother. A man. Tall, quiet, unknown. Nadira's blood ran cold. The same man she saw watching her outside the orphanage. She ended the call with trembling fingers. Her entire body shook as fear and rage wrapped around her like a tightening rope. Someone had taken her son or taken advantage of the chaos surrounding his death. She couldn't breathe. Needing clarity, Nadira opened her laptop. She enlarged Jabari's old photos on the screen, zooming in on his features. Then she pulled up the few images she had managed to secretly take of the boy today. Side by side. The same eyes. The same chin. The same tiny scar near the wrist from when he fell off his toy bicycle at 3 years old. The resemblance was not coincidence. It was certainty. Her heart began pounding as she whispered, "That boy is my son." Just as she let the truth settle, a soft creak echoed through the hallway. Her breath froze. Someone was inside her house. Nadira stood up slowly, listening intently. Another sound, barely perceptible footsteps moving near the kitchen. She backed toward the drawer where she kept a heavy flashlight for emergencies. Her fingers wrapped around it. "Who's there?" she demanded, voice shaking, but loud enough to carry through the house. Silence, then a faint rustle. Nadira stepped cautiously around the corner, flashlight raised. The kitchen window was open, swaying slightly in the wind. Her heart hammered. She never opened that window. Her gaze dropped to the floor. Footprints. Someone had come inside. Her hands shook so violently she almost dropped the flashlight. She turned toward the living room. Papers were scattered across the floor, the same papers she had laid out earlier. Jabari's hospital report. His toy car. The photo frame. Someone had touched them. An icy dread slithered down her spine. Was the intruder connected to the orphanage? To the man she saw? To whatever happened 3 years ago? She scanned the room, breath shallow. Nothing else seemed to be missing. Nothing broken. But someone had left something. On the coffee table sat a folded piece of paper. She approached it with trembling steps. A single sentence stared back at her in crude handwriting. "Stop digging. You won't like what you find." Her stomach twisted violently. Rage sparked behind her eyes, not fear, but a mother's fire. She grabbed the paper and crumpled it in her fist. "No," she whispered fiercely. "I will not stop. I will never stop." A sudden determination surged through her veins. She rushed to her desk and began searching online for any mention of the orphanage, the director, and hesitating only for a second, the name that kept haunting her memory. Kamari. The tall man who watched her. A name she had heard once before at her son's funeral. A man lurking at the back, talking urgently to a nurse. She remembered thinking he looked out of place, tense, alert, like he was expecting trouble. Her search revealed almost nothing. No social media. No public records. Just one old news article mentioning a man named Kamari involved in an investigation of child trafficking years ago. But the case details were sealed. Her pulse raced. Had he been protecting children or taking them? The line between savior and danger blurred dangerously in her mind. She clicked through pages until her eyelids burned. Finally, she forced herself to stop. She needed sleep. She needed clarity. She needed strength. But as she lay in bed staring into the darkness, all she could see was the boy's face. The face she had kissed goodnight for 7 years. The face she had grieved for 3 unbearable years. And now, the face that whispered her name before collapsing into her arms. "Mama!" Her pillow grew wet with silent tears. Tomorrow she would return to the orphanage. Tomorrow she would find the truth. But deep inside, a cruel, terrifying question gnawed at her. If the boy was truly Jabari, then whose body had she buried? Morning light crept into Nadira's bedroom long before she was ready to face the day. She hadn't slept, not truly. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the boy's face, heard his trembling whisper, felt his small fingers clinging to her shirt, as though afraid she would disappear again. She rose slowly, bracing her palms on the edge of the bed, as if the room might tilt. Her body felt heavy, but her purpose had never been clearer. She needed answers. She needed truth. And she needed to face whatever danger was circling her, no matter how dark or devastating it might be. After a rushed breakfast, she barely tasted Nadira, stepped outside. The chill of the morning cut through her thin sweater, but she welcomed it. It kept her alert. The streets were already bustling with people heading to work, kids in uniforms heading to school, vendors opening their stalls. Yet everything felt distant, muffled, unreal. Her mind was already at the orphanage. She arrived sooner than she expected. The building looked smaller now, more fragile. Yesterday, it had felt overwhelming. Today it felt like a cage guarding secrets too heavy to hold. Inside, the atmosphere was strangely quiet. No children running about, no chatter, no chaos. It unsettled her. She approached the reception desk. A young caretaker, the same one who guided her yesterday, glanced up nervously. "I'm here to see the boy, Nadira," said her voice steady. The woman hesitated. "Miss Nadira. I'm not sure if today is a good... Where is he?" Nadira pressed her tone sharper. The caretaker swallowed and gestured toward the hallway. "Miss Luleka is with him. But she told us not to." Nadira didn't wait for her to finish. She walked straight down the hall, her footsteps echoing sharply. She reached the infirmary door and pushed it open without knocking. Inside, she found Miss Luleka sitting beside the boy's bed, her posture stiff, her expression unreadable. The boy Zuhair, or Jabari, looked up instantly. "Mama," he cried instinctively, trying to climb off the bed. Luleka placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Stay, child." Nadira's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing calming him?" Luleka replied coolly. "He was frightened this morning." "Of what?" "Of memories," the director said. "Trauma does strange things. It must be handled carefully." Nadira stepped closer, ignoring her. The boy reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. "Did you sleep well?" she whispered. He nodded slowly. "I dreamed. You were singing, and a man was carrying me." His face scrunched slightly, but then the dream stopped. Nadira squeezed his hand back, her throat tightening. "You're safe now." A harsh sigh escaped from Luleka. "Mrs. Nadira, I think it is time we have a serious conversation." Nadira lifted her chin. "Then speak." The director stood, smoothing her suit jacket. "This attachment is unhealthy. You are projecting your grief onto this child." Nadira felt heat surge up her neck. "He calls me Mama. He remembers things only my son would know. And I have seen orphan children cling to strangers out of desperation." Luleka countered sharply. "It doesn't mean..." "It means something," Nadira snapped. "Something you're trying very hard to hide." The woman stiffened. "I am hiding nothing." "That's a lie," Nadira said, eyes blazing. "You won't give me a clear history of his arrival. You avoid questions. And someone broke into my house last night." Luleka's brows lifted. "Are you implying I had something to do with that?" "I'm implying you know more than you're saying." Silence crackled between them, hostile, electric. At last, Luleka exhaled and walked toward the door. "I will give you 10 minutes with him. Then I want you to leave. We will reassess this situation later." She closed the door behind her, leaving mother and child alone. The boy leaned into Nadira, instantly resting his head against her shoulder. "Don't go," he whispered. "I'm not leaving," she murmured, kissing the top of his head. "But I need to ask you something." He looked up, eyes wide. "Do you remember your name before you came here?" The boy hesitated, thinking hard. I think..." His brow furrowed deeply. Ja. He winced, bringing his hands to his temples. Nadira gently placed her palms over his. "It's okay. Don't force it." She didn't want to cause him pain. She just wanted the truth, but not at the cost of hurting him. Suddenly the boy whispered, "Mama, yesterday someone came to my window at night." Nadira felt her blood run cold. "Who?" she asked softly. "I don't know. A tall man. He had a scar on his cheek." The boy's voice trembled. He said I should forget everything. A wave of dread crashed over her. The description matched the man she'd seen watching her Kamari. Before she could speak, the door opened again. This time it wasn't Luleka, it was him. Kamari stood in the doorway, tall and imposing, his eyes fixed on Nadira with an intensity that felt like a warning and a plea at once. Nadira stood, instantly pulling the boy behind her. "Stay away from him." Kamari raised his hand slowly. "I'm not here to harm either of you." "Then why were you watching me? Why did you come into my house?" Nadira demanded. "It wasn't me who entered your home," he said quietly, "though I know who did." His gaze flicked to the boy. "Please," he added, "we need to talk." Nadira shook her head fiercely. "I'm not leaving him with anyone." Kamari stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Then he stays. But you need to hear the truth before someone silences it for good." Nadira's breath hitched. She didn't trust him, but she also didn't trust the orphanage. She glanced at the boy, his small fingers clutched her sleeve, trembling. "Speak," she said. Kamari's jaw tightened. 3 years ago, there was an attack. A coordinated abduction attempt targeting several children, including your son. Nadira's heart lurched violently. That's impossible. I was told. You were told lies, Kamari interrupted. There was no sudden medical complication. There was chaos, smoke, and someone used that chaos to take him. No, Nadira whispered. No. I saw his body. You saw clothing, Kamari corrected harshly. Not him. Her breath shattered. Kamari continued. I tried to save him. I grabbed him before they could take him, but I was injured. I handed him to someone I trusted, someone who betrayed us both. Nadira's lips parted slowly. Kamari's eyes darkened. The woman running this place. The words hit like a blow to the chest. No, Nadira breathed. She takes care of children. She sells them, Kamari said coldly, or hides them for those who do. Nadira's legs weakened. And my son, I tracked him for years. Every time I got close, he was moved, hidden. Kamari's voice cracked for the first time, low and pained. Yesterday was the first time I saw him since the night I lost him. The boy trembled behind Nadira, peeking from behind her arm. Mama, he whispered. He was the man who carried me. Nadira's heart nearly stopped. Kamari closed his eyes briefly, as if the confession hurt more than any wound. A sudden commotion erupted, outside the sound of hurried footsteps, doors slamming, people shouting. Kamari turned sharply. They know I'm here, he said. We need to leave. Now, Nadira's pulse thundered. We can't just take him. If we don't, Kamari said urgently, you will lose him again. The door handle rattled. Someone was trying to get in. Nadira reached for the boy's hand. She made her decision. Go, she whispered. And together they ran. They burst out of the infirmary like fugitives escaping a prison. Nadira held the boy tightly against her side, her breath trapped in her throat, her heartbeat loud enough to drown out every other sound. Kamari ran slightly ahead of them, scanning corners, checking doors, his movements sharp and practiced like a man who had spent too many years running from danger. Down the hallway, shouts erupted. Heavy footsteps pounded the floor. Someone yelled, "Don't let them leave the building." Nadira's grip tightened on the boy's small hand. Panic clawed at the edges of her chest. She had never run from anything in her life, never imagined a moment where she would sprint through an orphanage with a child pressed to her, terrified she might lose him again. Kamari signaled with his hand. This way, he turned left into a narrow hall, a staff-only corridor that smelled of old meals and cleaning chemicals. Nadira followed, struggling to keep up her breath ragged. She glanced back for a second, enough to see two men rushing into the hallway behind them. Not orphanage staff, not police, strangers. Her blood went ice cold. Kamari, someone's chasing us. I know, he said through clenched teeth. They're not here for you. They're here for him. The boy whimpered, burying his face into Nadira's hip. Why, Nadira cried. Why would anyone want to take a child? Kamari didn't answer. Not yet. His silence terrified her more than the footsteps closing in. They reached a back storage room. Kamari shoved the door open. Boxes and old metal cabinets lined the walls. A single window, narrow and barred, sat on the far end. Nadira's heart dropped. There's no way out. Kamari slammed the door behind them and locked it. Not through the hall, but there's another exit. He pushed past the boxes, ripping away a tattered sheet that revealed a panel cut out of the wall, small but large enough for a child or a very determined adult. You've done this before, Nadira breathed. Kamari didn't deny it. Go first. Take the boy. Nadira dropped to her knees and peered into the opening. It led into a cramped crawl space filled with dust and spider webs, but she saw light at the far end. An exit. She lifted the boy. Sweetheart, don't be scared. We're just going through a small tunnel, okay? His eyes widened. Mama, I'm scared. Her heart throbbed. I know, but I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. Kamari knelt beside them. I'll be right behind you both. Nadira pushed the boy into the tunnel first, then crawled in after him. The walls were cold and damp, scraping her elbows and knees. She tried to breathe slowly to avoid panicking, but the darkness pressed against her back like a weight. Behind her, Kamari slipped into the tunnel and slid the panel closed. The sounds of fists pounding on the door outside echoed faintly, muffled by the wall. Nadira, keep moving, Kamari urged. She pushed forward on her hands and knees, crawling toward the light. Each movement stirred dust that made her cough. She could hear the boy's frightened breaths just ahead of her. After several agonizing minutes, they reached the end, another sheet of metal blocking the exit. Kamari pushed past Nadira. Cover the boy's ears, he warned. Nadira wrapped her arms around the child while Kamari slammed his shoulder against the metal. Once, twice. On the third try, the panel burst outward. Fresh air flooded in as Kamari hauled himself out. They emerged behind the orphanage surrounded by old brick walls and dumpsters. But there was a narrow path leading to the street. Kamari reached down and pulled the boy out, then helped Nadira up. "Move," he said. "We aren't safe yet." They hurried down the narrow alley. When they reached the street, Kamari stopped abruptly. A black SUV sat parked across the road. Engine running, windows tinted, waiting. Nadira grabbed the boy instinctively. "Is that them?" Kamari's jaw tightened. "Yes. How do we get past them? We don't," he said. "We go around." He led them away from the main road, weaving through back streets and side alleys, the boy clinging to Nadira's waist. A few residents eyed them suspiciously, 3 people moving fast, one glancing over his shoulder constantly, but no one intervened. Nadira's lungs burned. "Where are we going?" "To a safe place," Kamari answered. "Just a few more blocks." But when they rounded a corner, 2 more men appeared standing beside another vehicle. They spotted Kamari instantly. "That's him," one shouted. Panic tore through Nadira. Kamari grabbed her arm and pulled her into the nearest open door, a mechanic's garage. Tools, tires, and metal parts littered the floor. A mechanic jumped to his feet in shock. "What's going on?" Kamari flashed a small badge. Nadira didn't get a clear look, but the mechanic's eyes widened. "I need your truck," Kamari said. "Now." The mechanic hesitated for a split second, then tossed him the keys. Kamari ushered Nadira and the boy toward a rusty pickup truck in the corner. "Get in." They climbed onto the back seat right as the garage door burst open. The 2 men ran inside shouting. Kamari slammed the truck in reverse tires screeching. The truck burst through the side exit of the garage, metal scraping against the frame. Kamari and Nadira screamed as they bolted into the street. "Who are those men?" Kamari gripped the wheel, swerving sharply to avoid a pedestrian. "Child traffickers, the same people who came for your son 3 years ago." Nadira felt her heart stop. "Traffickers, you're saying they never wanted to kill him," Kamari said. "They wanted to take him." The boy whimpered softly, clutching Nadira's arm. Nadira's throat tightened. "Why? Why, my son? Because of you." Nadira felt struck. "Me? You're the daughter of a man who exposed their entire network more than a decade ago," Kamari said. "They wanted revenge. They couldn't find your father, so they targeted you." Nadira's stomach heaved. "My father died years ago," she whispered. "He tried to protect our family, but I thought everything ended with him." "It didn't," Kamari said. "Your son became their leverage." "In the hospital," Nadira whispered. "The death certificate. They bribed the right people, switched the bodies. Hid your son here. Moved him whenever I got close." "Why hide him in an orphanage?" Nadira cried. "Because no one looks for children in plain sight." The truck swerved again as another car screeched behind them. "They're still following us," Nadira shouted. "I know," Kamari said, "but we're close." He turned abruptly into another alley, tires skidding. A small warehouse stood at the far end, old, abandoned, but not empty. 2 men emerged as they approached, not traffickers, not orphanage staff. They waved them in, allies. Kamari sped into the warehouse and slammed the brakes. He jumped out, flung the door open, and motioned for Nadira and the boy. "Hurry!" They scrambled out, just as the main doors slammed shut behind them. Locks clicked. Metal bars slid into place. Finally, safety. Nadira collapsed to her knees, the boy in her arms, her whole body trembling with exhaustion and fear. She clutched him tightly, breathing hard, fighting tears. Kamari knelt beside her. "I know this is too much," he said softly, "but you're safe here. They won't reach you." Nadira lifted her tear-filled eyes. "Kamari, everything you're telling me, is it truly real?" He met her gaze, weariness etched deep into his face. "Yes, and there's more you deserve to know." He paused. "But first, we need to talk about the night your son disappeared." Nadira's blood ran cold. The boy clung to her, tightly burying his face in her shoulder. In that moment, she realized something terrifying. The truth she had been begging for might destroy everything she once believed. The warehouse was dim, lit only by a few flickering bulbs strung across exposed metal beams. Dust floated lazily through the shafts of light, giving the space an abandoned, forgotten feeling. Yet Nadira had never been more aware of her surroundings. Every sound made her tense. Every shadow felt like a threat. The boy, her boy, sat beside her, wrapped in an oversized blanket one of Kamari's men had given him. His tiny fingers clung to her sleeve, as if letting go meant losing her again. Nadira brushed his curls gently, her heart aching with every small tremble of his body. Kamari stood a few steps away, speaking quietly with two of his allies. They looked like ordinary men, tired, worn by years of chasing shadows, but their eyes were alert, hardened, men accustomed to danger. One of them nodded repeatedly, glancing toward the child with a mixture of sympathy and urgency. Finally, Kamari approached. He lowered himself to the concrete floor, sitting across from Nadira, close enough to speak softly, far enough not to intimidate the boy. "You asked me to tell you the truth," he began. Nadira clenched her jaw. "I need it. All of it." Kamari took a slow breath, as if steadying himself. 3 years ago, the night your son disappeared, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a medical emergency. It was an attempt to take him. Nadira shook her head violently. "No. I was there at the hospital. There was no abduction attempt. There was," Kamari said firmly. "But you didn't see it." Her breath caught. "How?" "Because they created a distraction," he replied. "A fire in a nearby storage room. Enough smoke to cause chaos. Enough panic to scatter the staff. While everyone rushed to control the flames, the traffickers moved toward your son's ward." Nadira felt her stomach twist. Kamari continued, voice low and grave. "They were after children whose families had connections, families they could ransom or use as leverage. Your father made powerful enemies. Even after his death, they wanted something to break your family for good." Nadira blinked hard. "My son was a target because of me." "Yes," Kamari said. "Because of your father's last investigation. He exposed a trafficking ring that operated across borders. He put them in prison. But some escaped, and they vowed revenge." Nadira swallowed a sob. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because they bribed the wrong people," Kamari said bitterly. "Doctors, security staff, anyone they needed. A few resisted, some paid with their lives. Others disappeared." Nadira closed her eyes, fighting tears. "And you, where do you fit into all this?" Kamari paused. "I worked undercover," he said finally. "At the time I was infiltrating the same trafficking network your father exposed. I didn't know they were targeting your family until the night of the fire." He rubbed his temple, the memory clearly painful. "I saw one of their men creeping toward your son's ward. I followed him. When I realized they intended to take Jabari, I intervened." Nadira's breath hitched. "You saved him." "I tried," Kamari whispered. "I grabbed him before they could reach him. But those men, they were desperate. Violent. We fought. I was stabbed. I lost too much blood." Nadira covered her mouth. "In the hospital." "Why did they tell me he died?" Kamari's eyes hardened. "The traffickers switched the records. They left another child, one who sadly died during the chaos, to pass as your son. They needed you to grieve, so you would stop searching." "But why not take him then?" Nadira asked, voice shaking. "Because I escaped with him," Kamari said quietly. "I ran out the back exit, carrying him through the smoke. I thought I could reach my team." His voice lowered with shame. "I didn't get far." Nadira's chest tightened. "What happened? I collapsed," Kamari said. "Before I blacked out, I handed him to someone I thought I could trust. Someone who had worked with me before." Nadira leaned forward. "Who?" He hesitated. The warehouse seemed to hold its breath. "Lulika," Nadira froze. "The director of the orphanage." "Yes," Kamari said. "Back then she was supposed to be an informant. She fed us intel on trafficking routes. Or she pretended to." Nadira's pulse pounded in her ears. "She took the boy," Kamari continued. "Promised to protect him until I could return. But instead," Nadira whispered, "she hid him." "She hid him," Kamari confirmed, "and passed him off as an unknown orphan, likely planning to sell him once things cooled down. But you visited earlier this year, donating clothes during a charity event." Nadira's eyes widened. "He saw me," Kamari nodded. "According to one of my sources, he changed after that. He kept asking about a woman with a soft voice, a woman with curly hair, a woman who smelled like jasmine." Nadira felt her heart splinter. "That was you," Kamari said softly. "He remembered you. And she kept him anyway." Nadira whispered, tears spilling. "She kept him hidden while I mourned a child who wasn't even dead." Her voice broke completely. The boy reached up, touching her cheek. "Mama, don't cry." Nadira pulled him into her arms, holding him as if she could shield him from every shadow, every memory. After a long silence, she turned to Kamari. "What happens now?" Kamari hesitated. "There's more. And you need to hear it." Nadira nodded weakly. Kamari stood and motioned for his men to bring over a small folder. He handed it to Nadira. Inside were documents, photos, reports. One photo made her gasp. It was the black SUV that followed them. Kamari pointed at it. They've moved quickly since yesterday. They know you recognized him. They know he recognized you. Nadira looked up. Why is that so important to them? Because recognition means risk, Kamari said. If he remembers who took him, who hid him, the traffickers crumble. Nadira blinked. He was supposed to be their pawn. Kamari nodded grimly. Until you found him. Another photo showed Lulika in a meeting with two men, one of whom was part of the group that chased them at the orphanage. They've been working together, Nadira whispered. For years, Kamari said. She's not just hiding children, she's selling them. And your son was supposed to be her prize. Nadira wrapped her arms around the boy. They'll never take him again. Kamari looked at her with an intensity that made her spine straighten. Then you need to be ready for what comes next. The warehouse doors rattled suddenly once, twice. Nadira's heart lurched. Are they here? Kamari signaled his men. Stay behind me. The boy clung to her, shaking. Nadira held him close, whispering, I've got you. I've got you. The rattling stopped. The room fell silent. Then a voice called from outside. Kamari, we know you're in there. Hand over the boy. No one has to get hurt, the boy whimpered. Nadira's breath stopped. Kamari approached the door, expression cold. They found us faster than I expected. Someone must have tipped them off. Nadira clutched the boy tighter. What do we do? Kamari turned to her, a decision hardening in his eyes. We fight. Nadira held her son closer, feeling his heart beat against her chest. For 3 years she had cried for a lost child. Now she would do anything to protect the one she had finally found again. Outside footsteps gathered. Inside truth burned like wildfire. And the war for her son had only just begun. The warehouse quivered under the weight of fists pounding from the outside. Dust drifted from the ceiling beams with every violent strike. Nadira held the boy close, feeling his tiny body tremble with each thud. Her heart hammered wildly, but a fierce resolve rose inside her, sharper and stronger than fear. Kamari motioned for his two allies to brace the main entrance. One slid a heavy steel beam across the handles, while the other pushed crates toward the door, creating a makeshift barricade. The pounding only intensified. They won't hold back, Kamari muttered. They know if the boy speaks, everything they built collapses. Nadira swallowed hard. Then we can't let them take him, not again. Kamari nodded once. I won't. Nadira had so many questions, how many were outside what they planned, whether they'd force their way in, but there was no time. The boy squeezed her arm, staring at the door with wide, terrified eyes. Mama, are they bad people? He whispered. Yes, she answered without hesitation. But I'm here. I won't let them hurt you. A loud metallic screech echoed through the warehouse. Something heavy slammed into the door, likely a battering ram. Kamari cursed under his breath. They're prepared. That means we need to move before they break through. Move where, Nadira asked, scanning the warehouse. There's no exit. There is, Kamari said, pointing toward the rear. It's hidden behind the supply racks, an old delivery passage. They won't know about it unless someone tells them. Nadira stiffened, realizing the implication. You think we've been betrayed? Kamari's eyes darkened. Not by my men, but the traffickers have ears everywhere. Someone inside the orphanage must have seen us escape. Or, his voice lowered, or someone tied to you. Nadira felt a cold chill slide down her spine. That possibility was too painful to consider. The door screeched again. This time it bent inward slightly under the pressure. Kamari made his decision. We leave now. They'll be inside in less than 3 minutes. One of his allies, an older man with weary eyes, approached Nadira. I'll guide you and the boy. Kamari will hold them off. No, Nadira said, immediately grabbing the boy tighter. I won't leave him behind. Kamari shook his head. I'm not asking. I'm telling you what needs to be done. They want the boy, but they'll kill me first. That buys you time. Nadira's breath caught. Don't talk like that. Kamari looked at her, a strange warmth in his eyes, despite the chaos. I've been running from them for years. If it ends today, at least it ends for a reason. A thunderous crash made Nadira flinch. The top hinge of the door tore partially loose. Dust rained down. Voices outside grew louder. The older man grabbed Nadira's arm. We have to move. But Nadira looked at Kamari. You're coming with us. For a moment he hesitated. She saw conflict in his expression, duty-fighting instinct. Then he nodded once. Fine, but we move fast. He grabbed a duffel bag filled with documents and weapons. If we lose this, everything falls apart. Nadira didn't want to think about what everything meant. Kamari led them toward the back of the warehouse. He shoved aside a stack of old crates, revealing a narrow metal door covered in grime. He kicked it open. A dark passage stretched forward, tight, damp, barely lit by tiny wall lamps, flickering weakly. Nadira lifted the boy into her arms. He wrapped his legs around her waist and buried his face in her shoulder. "Stay close," Kamari said. "If you hear anything behind us, don't look back." She nodded. "Just go." He stepped into the passage first, followed by Nadira and the boy, and then the older ally behind them. The corridor was tight and long-lined with rusting pipes that hissed occasionally. Their footsteps echoed, bouncing off the walls. Behind them, the warehouse door finally gave way. A wave of shouts filled the space. They breached. Kamari whispered, "Move faster." Nadira clutched the boy and hurried her steps. Fear clawed up her throat, but adrenaline propelled her forward. The corridor twisted left, then right. A ladder appeared ahead, leading upward to another sealed hatch. Kamari climbed first and shoved the hatch open. Sunlight spilled into the passage along with the faint sounds of traffic. "Up," he called. Nadira climbed with the boy in her arms, awkward but manageable. As she reached the top, Kamari helped pull the child out and then her. The older man followed quickly, closing the hatch behind him as quietly as possible. They were now behind an old textile factory, surrounded by chain-link fences and scattered construction debris. Trucks rolled by on a nearby service road. It was open enough to run, but hidden enough to avoid casual eyes. "We need to reach my safe house," Kamari said. "It's a few minutes from here." But before they could take a step, a loud whistle pierced the air. They froze. From behind the factory wall, 3 men emerged, armed, alert, blocking the path. "There they are." Panic surged through Nadira's chest. Kamari pushed her behind him. "Run the other way," he ordered. But another group appeared from the opposite direction, closing in like wolves. They had been cornered. The boy whimpered, clinging to Nadira. "Mama, I'm scared." "I'm here," she whispered, voice shaking. "I won't let them take you." Kamari's eyes darted around, calculating. "There's only one chance." He pointed upward to the factory roof. "Climb!" Nadira stared at the pipes, bolted to the wall. "I can't climb that with him." "Yes, you can," Kamari said sharply. "It's that or lose him." Nadira swallowed her fear. She shifted the boy onto her back, tying him with her scarf to secure him. "Hold tight to Mama. Don't let go." He nodded, his small fingers gripping her shoulders. Kamari began climbing first, guiding her where to place her hands and feet. The enemy shouted below, guns raised. "Shoot them down!" Bullets pinged against metal. Nadira flinched, but she kept climbing, every fiber of her being focused on the child attached to her. Halfway up, a bullet grazed her arm. She gasped, nearly slipping. "Mama," the boy cried. "I'm okay," she whispered, pushing through the pain. Kamari reached the roof edge and pulled her up with both hands. The older ally climbed after them just as the traffickers began scaling the wall too. "We need to move," Kamari yelled. The rooftop was expansive, littered with vents and pipes. Kamari sprinted toward the opposite edge, where another building stood close enough to jump across. Nadira followed her legs, screaming with exhaustion. Gunfire erupted again. A bullet ricocheted off a vent near her head. "Faster," Kamari shouted. They reached the edge. Kamari leaped first, landing hard on the next building. He turned back. Nadira jumped. Nadira stared at the gap. It wasn't wide, but with a child on her back, it felt impossible. Her heart pounded. Her feet trembled. "Mama," the boy whispered, "please don't leave me." "I'll never leave you," she whispered back. Then she ran. She leaped. For a breathless moment, they hung in the air, suspended between life and death. Kamari grabbed her arm midair, yanking her onto the roof as she stumbled. The boy screamed and buried his face in her neck. The older ally made the jump just as bullets flew past. They kept running. They didn't stop until they reached an unmarked door hidden behind a water tank. Kamari punched a code into a small keypad. The door clicked open. Inside was a small apartment filled with surveillance screens, maps, documents, and medical supplies. A true safe house. Kamari shut the door behind them and locked it. Nadira collapsed onto the floor, the boy still clinging to her. She wrapped her arms around him and sobbed out of fear, pain, and overwhelming relief. Kamari knelt beside them. "You both did well," he said quietly. "You're safe now, for the moment." Nadira lifted her tear-streaked face. For the moment, she repeated shakily. Kamari hesitated. "They won't stop," he said. "Not until we end this." Nadira held her son tightly. "Then tell me," she whispered, voice trembling with fierce determination. "What must we do?" Kamari met her eyes, and for the first time he told her the full truth. The safe house was silent, too silent. After the chaos, gunshots, and frantic escape, the sudden stillness pressed down on Nadira like a weight. Her body trembled with aftershocks of fear, her arms wrapped protectively around the boy who clung to her like a lifeline. She could feel his heartbeat against her chest, rapid, terrified, but alive. Alive! That alone gave her strength. Kamari closed the metal door with a series of heavy locks, then moved toward the windows, securing each steel shutter. Only when the entire apartment was sealed did he allow himself to breathe. His two allies, identified earlier only by their code names Sefu and Lawazi, quietly checked the surveillance monitors. Their faces were tight with tension but disciplined. Professionals hardened by danger. Nadira held the boy closer. "Are they still following us?" "Not yet," Lawazi answered, tapping on a keyboard. "They're searching the factory grounds, but they haven't located the safe house entry." "For now," Sefu added, his voice low and gravelly, "they will find a trail eventually. These people don't give up. Not when the stakes are this high." Nadira's heart squeezed painfully. "Why?" she demanded. "Why, my son? Why not another child? Why go this far for us?" Kamari stepped forward, lowering himself to sit on the floor across from her. His face looked older than earlier, weighed down by years of a truth too dangerous to speak freely. "You need to know everything," he said quietly. "And once you do, there is no turning back." "I'm not turning back," Nadira said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Not anymore. Tell me." Kamari hesitated before nodding. "Your father, Ayo," he began, "was once one of the most respected investigative journalists in West Africa. 10 years ago, he uncovered a massive child trafficking network that operated through hospitals, orphanages, and cross-border adoption agencies." Nadira's breath hitched. "I knew about his work, but he kept most details from me. He did that to keep you safe," Kamari said. "But the network he exposed lost millions. Dozens of their leaders were arrested. But some of the most powerful escaped. And they wanted revenge," Nadira whispered. "They tried to find your father," Kamari said. "But by the time they tracked him down, he was already dying of heart failure. So they turned their focus elsewhere, to the only person left connected to him." Nadira breathed. Kamari nodded grimly. "But you weren't the easy target. You were an adult. You lived cautiously. You moved often. You knew danger better than most." Nadira opened her mouth to ask how he knew all this, but she didn't interrupt. "So instead," Kamari continued, "they decided to hurt you in the one way you could never recover from. They targeted Jabari." Nadira felt as though the room tilted. Her arms tightened around her son, who whimpered softly. She stroked his hair, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Mama's here." "They planned to take him during one of your visits to the hospital," Kamari said. "They studied your routine. They waited for the perfect moment." "The fire," Nadira whispered, remembering the sudden chaos, the alarms, the smoke. "But I thought the fire was caused by an accident." "It wasn't," Kamari said. "It was their distraction." Nadira shook her head, disbelief mixing with horror. "But the hospital staff told me." "They lied," Kamari said. "Some willingly, some under threat, some under payment. They made you believe your son died so you wouldn't look for him. And when you saw the body, it wasn't him." Nadira shut her eyes tightly. "I was grieving. I didn't look closely. I didn't." Her voice broke. "God, how could I not have known you weren't meant to know?" Kamari said gently. "They counted on your grief to blind you." The boy shifted slightly, lifting his head to stare at his mother with wide eyes. "Mama," he whispered softly, "I don't remember all of it, but I remember being pulled away. I remember smoke. I remember you crying." Nadira kissed his forehead. "You don't have to remember it now. Just know you're safe." The boy nodded shakily and rested against her again. After a moment, Nadira looked at Kamari. "What happened after you saved him, after you carried him out?" Kamari rubbed his hands together, the memory clearly painful. "I was injured, bleeding heavily. I knew I wouldn't reach my team in time, so I handed him to someone I trusted. Someone I believed was helping us reclaim children from traffickers. That person was Lulika." Nadira felt her stomach twist. "So she betrayed you. She betrayed all of us," Kamari said darkly. "She had been cooperating with the traffickers for years. She fed me just enough information to keep me from suspecting her, all while sabotaging investigations." Sefu cut in. "She disappeared from the grid for months after that night. When she resurfaced as the director of that orphanage, we suspected she was hiding something. But we couldn't infiltrate without proof. And she kept my son there," Nadira said, her voice trembling with fury. "She kept him hidden," Kamari confirmed, "and moved him multiple times whenever she felt watched. We were always one step too late." Nadira clenched her fists. "Until now." Kamari nodded. "When you saw him at the orphanage, And he recognized you. She panicked. That's why things escalated so quickly. And those men who chased us, part of the original trafficking ring, Kamari said. They've been hunting the boy to silence him or take him back. Nadira felt sick. He's just a child. To them, Kamari said bitterly, he's a loose end. The boy began to tremble. Nadira pulled him into her chest. Shh, baby, I won't let anyone hurt you. After a moment of heavy silence, Nadira finally asked the question she feared most. What do we do now? Kamari's expression shifted from grief to determination. We expose them, all of them, the entire network. Nadira blinked. How? They're dangerous, powerful, which is why we need evidence, Kamari said, holding up the duffel bag he carried, and I've been collecting it for years. He unzipped the bag, revealing stacks of documents, flash drives, photos, recorded conversations. Enough to bring down a criminal empire. But Kamari added grimly, there's one final missing piece. What piece? Nadira asked. The testimony of the only surviving victim who can identify them, Kamari said quietly. Nadira's breath caught. Her son. No, she said instantly. He's too young. He barely remembers. I won't put him through that. Kamari's eyes softened. I don't want him hurt either, but they won't stop chasing him unless something forces them to. Nadira looked down at the boy, her boy, whose big brown eyes stared back at her with unquestioning trust. He had already suffered too much for a child. She cupped his cheek. I'll protect you, I promise. He whispered, I know you will, Mama. Her heart cracked with love and pain. Kamari spoke softly. There is another way, one that doesn't involve putting him on a witness stand yet. Nadira looked up sharply. What way? We take down Lulika first, Kamari said. Once she's exposed, the rest of the chain collapses. She knows every contact, every safe route, every buyer. She's their backbone. Nadira felt a spark of rage flicker inside her. How do we expose her? Kamari met her eyes with grim determination. By going back to the orphanage, Nadira froze. We barely escaped with our lives. And that is exactly why she won't expect us to return, Kamari said. We infiltrate quietly. We retrieve the original files she hid, the real records of your son's arrival, and we leak them. Sifu nodded. If we get those documents, the entire network unravels. Luwazi glanced at the surveillance screens. But we need to move before the traffickers realize you're still alive. Nadira took a deep breath. Her son snuggled into her arms. Kamari watched her, waiting for her decision. She finally spoke. Then we go back, she said. We get the truth. We bring her down. Kamari nodded once. Good, he said. Then we move before nightfall. Nadira held her son tightly, her heart pounding. She had cried for her child for 3 long, agonizing years. Now she would burn down the world to protect him, and to end the nightmare once and for all. The minutes leading up to their departure felt stretched and warped, as though time itself struggled to keep up with the gravity of what they were about to do. Nadira sat beside her son on the old worn-out sofa in the safe house. She held his small hand, tracing his fingers one by one, committing the warmth of him to memory, as if afraid she might lose him again the moment she looked away. He leaned into her side, silent but alert, his wide eyes scanning the room nervously. He clearly sensed the tension, the urgency, the fear beneath every adult breath. Mama, he whispered, are we going somewhere scary? Nadira cupped his cheek gently. We are going somewhere dangerous, she admitted. But you won't be alone, and we'll be careful. He nodded slowly, the bravery in his expression both heartbreaking and astonishing. He had endured so much, far more than any child should ever have to, but he still leaned on her, trusted her fully, instinctively. That trust filled Nadira with a fierce determination. Kamari approached his steps, measured and steady. We leave in 10 minutes, he said quietly. I want to walk through the plan with you one more time. Nadira straightened, nodding. Tell me. Kamari crouched near the coffee table, unfolding a crude map of the orphanage grounds. Sifu and Luwazi stood on either side, armed, tense, watching the windows. The orphanage has 2 key locations we need access to, Kamari explained, pointing with a gloved finger. First, the director's private office. That's where she hides all unauthorized files, admission logs, donor records, staff activity sheets, and transfer documents. And my son's real file, Nadira said. Kamari nodded. That will be there. It will prove Luleka received him under false pretenses, hid him, and altered his identity. And the second location, Nadira asked. The basement, he replied. It's heavily restricted. Only senior staff and Luleka herself have access. That's where she keeps digital backups and where she conducts private meetings with buyers. Nadira felt her blood run cold. She did that to other children. Kamari hesitated, then said yes. Many. A sharp pain stabbed through Nadira's chest. The thought of so many children betrayed, hidden, sold while their families mourned them filled her with rage. She tightened her grip on her son protectively, as though shielding him from the memory of what almost became his reality. "We're not just doing this for him," she whispered. "We're doing it for all of them." Kamari nodded solemnly. "Exactly," he continued. "We split into 2 teams. I'll take Lawazi to the basement to secure the digital backups. You and Sefu will go to Lulika's office. You know what your son's records look like. You'll recognize anything tied to him faster than any of us." Nadira swallowed hard. "Why split us?" "Because time is our biggest enemy," Kamari said. "The traffickers will figure out sooner or later that you didn't die during the chase. The moment they realize you survived, they'll return to the orphanage, likely with reinforcements." Nadira's pulse quickened. "And if they arrive while we're inside," Kamari's expression hardened, "then we don't get caught." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the truth. If things went wrong, they might not all make it out. Nadira looked down at her son. "He stays here. He doesn't move." But the boy immediately grabbed her arm. "No, Mama, please don't leave me." Her heart splintered. She gathered him into her arms. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered. "You'll stay with Sifu's friend. He'll protect you, and I will come back for you." "I swear it." The boy's lower lip trembled, but he nodded. "You promise?" "I promise, with everything I have." Kamari checked his watch. "It's time." The safe house team geared up quickly. Handheld radios, small flashlights, lockpicks, portable document scanners, and encrypted drives. Nadira wore no gear besides a dark jacket and a small backpack. But she carried more resolve than all of them combined. They left the safe house through a back exit, following a narrow dirt path that wound between abandoned workshop buildings. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky with streaks of orange and red colors that made the world look aflame. The orphanage sat at the end of a long road surrounded by low concrete walls and a rusted metal gate. In the fading light, it looked almost innocent again. Almost safe. But Nadira saw it now for what it truly was, a cage masquerading as sanctuary. Kamari raised a fist, signaling them to halt. He scanned the area through binoculars. "No guards at the entrance," he murmured. "Suspicious, but good for us." "That means they think the danger is outside," Sefu said. "Or they think we're dead," Kamari replied. They approached quietly, slipping through a gap in the gate where the bars had rusted apart. The courtyard was empty, eerily still. Nadira felt a shiver crawl up her spine. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong, too quiet, too easy. Inside the building, the hallways were dim, lit only by a few emergency bulbs. The usual noise of children and staff was gone. "Where is everyone?" Nadira whispered. "Moved," Kamari said grimly. "Lulika doesn't take chances. She likely relocated the children after yesterday." Nadira clutched her chest. "You mean—" "She evacuated them to hide evidence. To hide everything," Kamari confirmed. "But she couldn't move the files. Those are what we're here for." They reached a fork in the hallway. Kamari met Nadira's eyes. "This is where we split." Nadira nodded. She turned to Sefu. "Lead the way." Sefu nodded once and guided her down the left corridor toward the director's office. Meanwhile, Kamari and Lawazi disappeared down the right corridor, heading toward the basement. As Nadira walked, each step echoed through the silent hall. Memories resurfaced. The boy running to her. The first time she heard him whisper "Mama." The fear she felt when she lost sight of him again. She pushed the memories down. This was no time for tears. They reached Lulika's office, a large wooden door with a frosted glass panel. Sefu checked the hallway. "All clear," he said. "Let's do this." He picked the lock with practiced precision. Within seconds, the door clicked open. Nadira entered first. The office was immaculate, meticulously arranged. A large mahogany desk sat at the center, surrounded by tall cabinets and locked drawers. Immediately, Nadira's eyes landed on something. An all-too-familiar blue folder lying on the desk, half hidden under a stack of papers. Her breath stopped. The name on the tab was smudged, but she recognized the first letter. J. Her heart clenched. She reached for it, but Sefu caught her wrist. "Wait." He knelt beside the desk and scanned beneath it. "Tripwire," he muttered. "Pressure trigger. If you lifted that folder, alarms would go off." Nadira's stomach twisted. She trapped her own files. She trapped anything important, Sefu said, "which means that folder is real." He disabled the mechanism in seconds. "Now you can open it," he said. Nadira lifted the folder with trembling hands and opened it. Her breath caught. Inside were documents, official ones, bearing her son's real name. Hospital intake forms. A transfer authorization with Lulika's signature forged poorly across the page. A photograph blurry rushed of her son as a toddler in the orphanage courtyard. A memory stolen from her. Her vision blurred. Tears dripped onto the papers. "Mama, Mama," her boy had whispered. Sefu spoke softly. "Scan everything. Quickly." Nadira's hands shook as she fed each page through the portable scanner. Every beat felt like a heartbeat. Every scanned document was a bullet in the empire that stole her son. Halfway through, she heard a faint noise, something soft but sharp down the hallway. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Sefu raised a hand. Both froze. Another sound, a footstep, then a voice, cold, female, going somewhere, Mrs. Nadira. It was Lulika, standing in the doorway, armed and smiling. For a single breathless second, the room froze. Nadira's heart nearly stopped. Standing in the doorway was the woman she once believed cared for, abandoned children. Now in the dim orphanage office under flickering lights, Miss Lulika looked like something else entirely. An architect of nightmares. Her hand gripped a gun with chilling steadiness. Her lips curled into a mocking, almost gentle smile that made Nadira's skin crawl. "Well," Lulika said in a voice smooth as silk, "I suppose I should congratulate you. You were far more persistent than I anticipated." Sefu instantly stepped in front of Nadira, placing himself between her and the weapon. His voice remained calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Put the gun down," he warned. "It doesn't have to end this way." But Lulika only chuckled. "Oh, Sefu, always so noble, but terribly naive." She tilted her head. "You think I wasn't told you were sniffing around? You think your little underground alliance went unnoticed?" Her gaze shifted to Nadira, darkening. "And you? I must say I underestimated the power of a grieving mother." She clicked her tongue. "A mistake I won't make again." Nadira gripped the folder tightly, knuckles white. "You stole my son," she hissed. "You hid him. You erased him." Lulika sighed dramatically. "Erased? No, dear. I preserved him. For a price far higher than you can imagine." The venom in those words made Nadira's stomach twist. "You would have sold him." "I still might," Lulika replied, raising the gun a fraction. "If you don't hand over what you just scanned." Nadira stepped back involuntarily. Her pulse hammered in her ears. "Never." Lulika's smile sharpened. "Oh, then perhaps I should start with him." She glanced at Sefu. "Move aside. I only need the mother." Sefu didn't move. Her voice dropped. "Move or die." The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. Everything happened at once. Sefu lunged sideways, grabbing the edge of a metal filing cabinet and flipping it down as a shield. A gunshot exploded through the room, the sound deafening. The bullet ricocheted off, metal sparks flying. Nadira screamed instinctively, crouching behind the desk. "Get down!" Sefu roared. Another shot tore through the bookshelf, shattering wood and paper. Nadira crawled across the floor, clutching the file, her heartbeat a frantic drum in her chest. Lulika advanced with terrifying confidence, firing again. "You can't hide," she shouted. "Give me the file, Nadira." You don't know what you're doing, but Nadira knew exactly what she was doing. She was fighting for her child. Sefu dove across the floor, tackling Lulika's legs. The gun flew from her hands, skidding under the desk. She screamed in fury, kicking and clawing like a wild animal. Sefu tried to restrain her, but she reached into her coat with lightning speed, pulling out a hidden knife. "Sefu," Nadira cried. He blocked the first slash with his forearm, grunting in pain. Blood spattered across the floor. She slashed again, aiming for his throat. Nadira's body moved before her brain could catch up. She grabbed the closest object, a heavy paperweight, and hurled it with all her strength. It struck Lulika's shoulder. She jolted backward, losing her grip on the knife. Sefu took the chance, pinning her arm hard to the floor. She screeched, thrashing violently. "You idiot woman!" Lulika spat at Nadira. "Do you know what you've done? Do you know who I work for? They will destroy you." Nadira grabbed the gun beneath the desk before Lulika could reach for it. Her hands shook violently, but she held it aimed directly at the woman's chest. "Don't move," Nadira whispered, her voice trembling with fury. "Not 1 inch." Lulika froze more from calculation than fear. Her eyes gleamed with hatred. "You won't shoot me," she hissed. "You're not built for this." The words sliced through the air. Nadira stepped closer, her voice steadying. "You kept my son. You stole years from his life. You nearly got him killed. Don't test me." Sefu pinned Lulika harder, panting from pain. "Nadira, go. Take the file. Finish scanning everything. I'll handle her." Nadira hesitated. You're bleeding, I've survived worse, he said through clenched teeth. Move, every instinct screamed at her to stay, but she forced herself to obey. She returned to the desk, scanning the final pages with trembling hands. Each document felt like a blow to her heart: transfer logs, bribe receipts, forged admissions. Proof of everything. Proof no one could ignore. Then her fingers froze on one particular document. A ledger listing children. Names, dates, amounts. Her son's name was there, next to a number that made her vision blur. Sefu, she whispered, her heart breaking. She put a price on him. I know, he said quietly. That's why we're here. Before she could react, the radio clipped to Sefu's vest crackled to life. Kamari's voice, sharp and urgent. Sefu, Nadira. They've found us. We need to evacuate now. We have company armed. Repeat, armed. Nadira's blood ran cold. Lulika laughed beneath Sefu. It seems your little friends failed. More gunshots echoed in the distance, this time from the basement. Kamari shouted again, get out, repeat, get out. They're blocking both exits. Sefu cursed under his breath. This just got worse. Lulika twisted beneath him, eyes wild. It's over. They're coming for all of you. Shut up, Sefu snapped, restraining her harder. Nadira grabbed the scanner and files. What do? We take the roof, Sefu said. It's the only path left. He yanked Lulika to her feet and tied her wrists with a cable tie. She hissed like a cornered viper. You can't stop this, she said. You're too late. Even if you expose me, you'll be behind bars, Nadira snapped. And my son will be free. They moved quickly into the hallway. Gunshots echoed faintly from below. Kamari and Lawazi were fighting for their lives. Nadira's chest tightened. We have to help them. We will, Sefu said. But first we get you and the evidence to the roof. They ran through the dim corridor. Nadira's heart pounded so hard she felt faint, but she kept going. The stairwell loomed ahead, narrow-shadowed. As they reached it, a crashing sound echoed below. Kamari's voice shouted in the radio, Get her out! Don't let her get caught! Go! Nadira's chest seized with panic. Kamari! But the radio cut out with a burst of static. They raced up the stairs. At the top, Sefu shoved open the maintenance door to the roof. Wind blasted against them. Nadira squinted as evening light met her eyes. The rooftop was wide and exposed. Sefu pushed Nadira ahead. Get to the far edge. My team is 2 buildings away, they'll pull you across. But then a sharp clapping sound echoed through the air. Slow, mocking. Nadira turned. Standing at the far corner of the roof, flanked by 2 armed men, was the leader she had never met. A tall man with a scar running down his cheek. The same man her son described. Well, he said with a smile that chilled her to the bone, the mother finally comes home. Nadira clutched the files to her chest. Sefu reached for his gun. The man raised a hand. I wouldn't, he said softly. Or the child dies. Nadira's heart stopped. Where is he? She whispered. The man stepped closer, smiling cruelly. With us. And then, out of the shadows, her son was pushed forward, crying. Terrified. Hands bound. Mama! Help me! Nadira screamed. The nightmare had only just begun. The scream tore from Nadira's throat with a force she didn't know she possessed. It split the air, raw and primal, echoing against the rooftop walls. Her son, her little boy, stood trembling between the 2 armed men. His wrists were bound, his small face streaked with tears. His breath came in sharp, terrified hiccups. Mama, Mama, please, he whispered, voice cracking. Nadira surged forward instinctively, but Sefu grabbed her arm, pulling her back. Don't, he hissed. They'll shoot. The scarred man smiled as if savoring the moment. Good, very good. I see you cared deeply for the boy. He clicked his tongue mockingly. Shame you didn't care enough to give him up sooner. We could have avoided all this trouble. Nadira's chest burned. Her nails dug into her palms, drawing blood. Let him go, she said, her voice hoarse. Take me instead. Whatever you want, take me. Oh, I intend to, the man replied. But first, he nodded to his men. One of them shoved the child forward. The boy stumbled but didn't fall. His eyes stayed locked on Nadira. Mama, baby, she choked. Mama's here. I'm right here. Sefu stepped protectively in front of her, gun drawn but aimed low, avoiding sudden movements. The scarred man watched him with lazy amusement. You're outnumbered, Sefu, he said. 3 on the roof, more downstairs. And your little team in the basement? Well, let's just say they won't be joining you. Nadira's blood ran cold. Kamari, she whispered. Lawazi. The man shrugged, feigning sympathy. They fought bravely. But bravery only gets you so far. Seifu's grip tightened on his gun jaw clenching. Nadira could sense his restraint, his need to shoot the man, but his knowledge that doing so might kill the boy instantly. The scarred man clasped his hands behind his back. Now, let's discuss the terms. You give me the files, the scans, every shred of evidence you're carrying. Then, perhaps, I'll return the child to you. Nadira's heart pounded. She knew he was lying. Even if she gave him everything, he wouldn't let them walk away alive. He wanted to end this loose end once and for all. But she also knew she couldn't let them take the boy away again. Not alive. Not dead. Not ever. Seifu, she whispered. He understood instantly. Don't give him the file, Seifu murmured back. Whatever happens, you hold on to it. The scarred man noticed their quiet exchange. His smile twisted. You two seem to be plotting. Should I be concerned? He raised his gun slightly toward the child. Because I can end this problem right now. No, Nadira cried, stepping forward. The scarred man's gun followed her movement. Hand, over, the file. Nadira's arms shook violently, her toying between survival and sacrifice, rage and desperation. She felt the thick folder pressed to her chest, every page inside a weapon strong enough to destroy this monster's world. But none of it mattered if her son died. Her fingers loosened. No, Seifu whispered urgently. Don't. The scarred man lifted a brow. You have 3 seconds. Nadira's breathing grew shallow. Sweat trickled down her spine. The boy sobbed harder. Mama, I want you. He didn't finish. A gunshot cracked through the air. For a split second, Nadira's world went white with terror. Then she realized it wasn't aimed at her. It wasn't aimed at her son. One of the armed men beside the boy dropped to his knees, clutching his shoulder, screaming in pain. Blood splattered across the concrete. What? Before she could process it, another shot rang out. The second guard stumbled backward, collapsing beside the first one. From the far edge of the roof, a familiar voice shouted Nadira down Kamari. Alive, bleeding, bruised, but alive. He emerged over the rooftop edge like a ghost risen from fire, gun in hand, breath ragged, eyes burning with fury. Lawazi appeared beside him, pale but determined, clutching a pistol with both hands. They had fought their way through. The scarred man snarled fury, twisting his features. Kill them now! Gunfire erupted in a chaotic storm. Seifu shoved Nadira behind a large ventilation unit. Stay down, Nadira dropped, covering her son with her own body, shielding him from stray bullets. The rooftop exploded with noise, shouts, heavy footsteps ricocheting metal. Kamari and Lavazi fired from their angle, Seifu, from his forcing the traffickers to scatter. But the scarred man was fast, too fast. He ducked behind a water tank, returning fire with precise, deadly aim. Kamari barely avoided a bullet as it grazed his side, tearing fabric and skin. Kamari, Nadira cried. I'm fine, he shouted back, even though his stagger said otherwise. In the chaos, one of the wounded guards scrambled to grab the child. Nadira lunged forward, slamming into him with a strength she didn't know she had. They tumbled. She clawed at his face, screamed, kicked, becoming a force of pure maternal instinct. Seifu tackled the man off her, disarming him in one swift movement. The boy crawled into Nadira's arms. Mama, I'm here, baby, she gasped, hugging him to her chest. I'm right here. But it wasn't over. The scarred man erupted from cover, firing wildly. Lawazi ducked behind a chimney stack as bullets shattered the brick around him. Kamari tried to flank the man, but he was limping, injured more badly than he admitted. The scarred man advanced, straight toward Nadira. He wanted the evidence. He wanted the boy. He wanted to end this. Nadira clutched the file, heart pounding against her ribs. Give it to me! The man snarled, gun aimed at her forehead. Now! No, Nadira whispered. Never. The man's lip curled back in fury. He stepped closer. Kamari saw him and fired. But he was half a second too slow. The scarred man fired first. A deafening blast shook the air. Nadira screamed. Seifu jolted backward, taking the bullet straight to the shoulder, shielding her again. He collapsed to the ground, gritting his teeth in agony. The scarred man turned his gun back to Nadira, but she launched herself at him with a ferocity that stunned even him. They struggled violently. Nadira clawed at his arm, trying to push the gun away. He slammed her into the ground. Pain shot up her spine. She fought back with everything inside her. He towered over her, raising the gun. It ends, now, he hissed. A gun clicked behind him. No, Kamari growled, voice like thunder. It ends with you. The scarred man spun, and Kamari fired. The shot was clean, precise, deadly. The scarred man staggered backward, shock etched across his twisted face. His gun slipped from his hand. He teetered on the edge of the roof and fell. Silence swallowed the rooftop. Nadira lay gasping, the boy crying into her chest. Kamari dropped to his knees, breathing hard. Luwazi limped over, pulling Sefu to safety. Nadira pulled her son into her arms, tears streaming down her face. It's over, baby. Mama's here. But even as she whispered the words, she knew the truth. This victory was only one battle. The war wasn't over. The documents still had to be exposed. The network still had to fall. And somewhere deep inside the orphanage, Miss Lulika was still alive. The rooftop fell into an eerie quiet, broken only by the ragged breaths of the living and the distant echo of the scarred man's body, striking something far below. Nadira held her son, feeling the tremors still coursing through his small frame. His face was buried against her neck, tears soaking into her skin. She tightened her arms around him, whispering over and over, "You're safe. Mama's got you. You're safe now." But deep inside, Nadira knew safety was temporary. It always had been. Kamari collapsed to one knee, clutching his wounded side. Sweat dripped from his brow and blood seeped through his shirt. Luwazi rushed over, tearing fabric and pressing it hard against the wound. "You're losing too much blood," Luwazi warned. "We need to move." Sefu, despite his own injury, pushed himself upright with a grunt. If that fall didn't kill him, he rasped, the others might still be in play. Nadira looked up sharply. Others, Sefu nodded grimly. The scarred man wasn't alone. That was just one part of their enforcement. The network is bigger than you know. A chill crept down her spine. She stood, her son still clinging to her, and forced her shaking legs to steady. "We need to finish what we came for," she said, determination burning in her voice. "We need to expose everything. Today." Kamari managed a tight, pained smile. "That's the spirit your father had." Then he winced, biting back a groan. Luwazi shook his head. "We stay out here any longer, reinforcements will corner us. We need to get inside." Nadira nodded, wiping tears from her son's cheeks. "Stay close, sweetheart. Don't let go of Mama." "I won't," he whispered, gripping her tightly. They hurried toward the rooftop door, Sefu leading with his gun ready. When he yanked it open, they found a tragedy waiting on the other side. A man lay on the floor of the stairwell, slumped against the wall, one of the orphanage's night guards. Blood soaked the front of his uniform. His eyes were half open, glassy, fading. Nadira gasped. "Is he?" The guard coughed violently, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. "Miss Lulika," he managed weakly. She shot me. I tried to stop her. But Nadira knelt beside him, her son clinging to her. "Help is coming," she whispered, though she wasn't sure it was true. The guard shook his head. You don't understand. She escaped. She's not done." Nadira felt her chest tighten. Where did she go? He inhaled sharply, struggling to speak. "Downstairs, her private exit. She said she needed to finish the job before the sun set." Nadira froze. "Finish the job?" Her son trembled violently in her arms. Before she could speak, the guard's body slackened. His breath stilled. His eyes faded completely. Nadira pressed a hand to her mouth, swallowing a sob. "God." Kamari placed a hand on her shoulder. "We don't have time. If Lulika escapes, she'll go underground. We'll never find her again." Nadira wiped her tears and forced herself to stand. She felt something shift inside her, pain turning into something sharper, fiercer. Resolve. "Where would she go?" Nadira demanded. "She can't just vanish." Kamari exchanged a look with Sefu. Both men seemed to understand something unspoken. "She has a safe route," Sefu said. "We knew she had one, but we never found it." Kamari clenched his jaw. "She's using the old emergency tunnels beneath the orphanage. They connect to abandoned sewer lines. Those tunnels are a maze," Luwazi added. "She could disappear in minutes." Nadira hugged her son tightly. "Then we chase her before she reaches the exit." Sefu shook his head. "With a child, too dangerous." Nadira glanced at her son, his terrified eyes, his trembling hands. Her heart ached to shield him from every danger. But she knew something else too. If they let Luleka escape, he would never be safe. Not truly. Nadira took a deep breath. "We finish this. All of us." Kamari, despite bleeding heavily, nodded. "Let's move." They descended the staircase, stepping over spent bullet casings and bloodstains, the remnants of battles fought just minutes earlier. The hallway below was dim, the emergency generator flickering. Shadows stretched across the walls like twisted hands. Nadira felt her son press his face into her shoulder. "Mama, I'm scared," she kissed the top of his head. "I know, sweet boy, but you're the bravest child I've ever known." Sefu led the way, scanning every corner. Kamari limped behind, gun drawn, but grip weakening. Nadira followed between them, shielding her son. Luwazi took the rear, watching for ambushes. They reached a sealed door at the end of the west wing, a door Nadira had never noticed before. It was heavy steel, painted the same color as the walls to conceal it. Sifu pushed his shoulder against it. "It didn't budge," Kamari pointed. "There's a fingerprint pad." Nadira's heart sank. "How do we open it?" Sifu stepped back, cracking his knuckles. "We try everything." He slammed his shoulder into the door with brute force. The metal groaned but held. Luwazi searched nearby cabinets, ripping them open. No tools. Kamari leaned heavily on the wall, breathing shallow. "We're running out of time." Then Nadira noticed something. A faint smear of blood on the pad, fresh. She pressed her fingers to the stain. It was still warm. "She went this way," Nadira whispered. "Just minutes ago." Sifu cursed softly. "We need to get in now." Then Nadira froze. An idea hit her. She wouldn't escape without backup, and she wouldn't shoot a loyal guard without reason. What if? She looked down the hallway. What if she left someone else behind? A voice suddenly echoed faintly from the other end of the corridor. "Hello! Is someone there?" Nadira, Kamari, and Sifu raised their weapons simultaneously. A small shape emerged from the shadows. A child. A girl no older than 7, tear-streaked, shaking. A lanyard hung from her neck, a badge with Lulika's photo attached. Sefu frowned. "An access badge," the girl sniffled. "She told me to stay here. She said someone would come for me." Nadira approached slowly. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" "Bina," the girl whispered. "Bina," Nadira said gently. "Can you give me that badge?" The girl hesitated, then nodded. She unclipped it and placed it in Nadira's hand. Lulika's fingerprint wasn't needed. Her badge was. Nadira pressed it to the reader. A green light flashed. The door clicked open. A gust of cold, stale air hit them from the dark tunnel beyond. Sefu exhaled. Good thinking. Kamari steadied himself, jaw tight. "Let's end this." But before Nadira stepped forward, the little girl tugged on her sleeve. Miss Bina whispered. She said something before she left. Nadira knelt. What did she say? Bina's eyes filled with fear. She said, "Finish the boy, and if the mother gets in my way, finish her too." Nadira felt her blood turn to fire. She stood tall, her son clinging to her, and walked into the tunnel. Her voice was cold steel. "We find her." She tightened her grip on her son, "and we finish this. For good." The tunnel swallowed them whole. Cold, damp air pressed against Nadira's skin as she descended the narrow concrete steps, her footsteps echoing down the dark corridor like faint warnings. She held her son tightly against her side, his small arms wrapped around her neck. His breath trembled against her collarbone. Kamari limped just behind her, leaning heavily on the tunnel wall. Sefu and Lavazi flanked the group, every sense alert. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing cracked brick-rusted pipes and faded graffiti left from decades past. These were no ordinary maintenance tunnels. They were escape routes constructed long ago, forgotten by the state, remembered only by criminals who thrived in shadows. Perfect for disappearing, perfect for predators, perfect for someone like Lulika. "Stay close," Sifu whispered, voice echoing down the corridor. "She won't get far. These tunnels don't go straight, they twist." "Good," Nadira murmured. "Then she doesn't know how close we are." Her son lifted his head. "Mama, are there monsters here?" Nadira pressed a kiss to his hair. "No monsters that Mama can't fight." Kamari managed a weak chuckle. "He takes after you." Nadira didn't smile. She couldn't. Not with what waited ahead. They followed the narrow path until it forked into 2 separate tunnels, one leading right, sloping downward, the other left, climbing toward the surface. Sifu knelt near the ground, examining footprints in the dust. She went right. "Fresh prints. She's moving fast. And she knows we're coming," Lavazi added. They turned right. The tunnel grew narrower, the air colder. Water dripped from unknown cracks above, forming small puddles underfoot. The darkness felt alive, as if following them. Suddenly, a faint noise carried through the corridor. A clatter, a metal clang, then a scream, high-pitched, sharp, terrified. Nadira's heart lurched. Was that she choked? "Not the boy," Sefu assured her quickly. "Different voice. Older." They pushed forward faster. The tunnel widened into a small chamber like an old service hub long abandoned. Rusted lockers leaned crookedly against walls. Chains hung from ceiling hooks. A single flickering light swung overhead. And in the center, a man lay unconscious, bleeding from a wound on his head. A maintenance worker. His shirt bore the orphanage logo. Kamari knelt, checking his pulse. Alive. Barely. Lawazi scanned the area. She's leaving bodies behind to slow us down. Nadira's stomach twisted. She's desperate. More dangerous, Sefu corrected. As they turned to continue, the corridor ahead erupted in a low rumble. They froze. What was that? Lawazi whispered. Then another rumble, followed by a groan like metal being twisted. She's collapsing, the tunnel behind her. Kamari realized, eyes widening. She's trying to trap us. A loud crack split the air. Run, Sefu shouted. They bolted down the corridor, debris falling behind them as the tunnel ceiling crumbled. Dust filled the air. Stones crashed at their heels. Nadira clutched her son, sprinting with every ounce of strength she had left. A massive chunk of concrete crashed down inches behind Lawazi. Faster, he yelled. But the tunnel ended abruptly at another steel door resembling a bunker entrance, thick and imposing. Badge, Sefu shouted. Nadira slammed Lulika's badge onto the panel. Nothing. She tried again. Still nothing. The rumbling grew louder. Stones began falling like rain. It's locked, Nadira yelled. She deactivated the scanner. Sefu rammed his shoulder into the door. It won't hold. Kamari limped toward the door, drawing a small black device from his jacket. Back away. Nadira pulled her son close as Kamari slapped the device onto the keypad. A piercing beep. Sparks flew. Boom. The door blasted open just as the ceiling behind them collapsed. The group dove through the entrance, tumbling into the next passage as the tunnel sealed shut behind them with thunderous finality. Silence fell. Dust hung in the air. For a moment, no one moved. Then Lawazi coughed weakly. Well, she definitely knows we're coming. Nadira stood, inhaling sharply. We don't stop. Not until we catch her. They pressed forward. The new tunnel was different, cleaner, reinforced with steel beams lined with cables that stretched into the distance. It felt newer, more intentional. Kamari frowned. This isn't part of the abandoned system. This was built deliberately. For escape, Sefu muttered. For trafficking, Lawazi added in disgust. Nadira felt bile rise in her throat. She used this to move children. Her son whimpered. She held him tighter, her rage simmering. They walked until they reached a heavy door ahead with a glowing red emergency light. Behind the door came muffled voices, panicked, hurried. Sefu signaled for silence. They listened. A woman's voice, furious, desperate. Nadira recognized it instantly. Luleka. I don't care what you have to do, she snapped. Just get the vehicle ready. They were supposed to be dead. How are they still alive? A man replied, tense. The safe route is blocked, and the guards you hired, they failed. Luleka shrieked. Something crashed. Everything depends on tonight. Nadira's grip on her son tightened. Her breath trembled with fury. Kamari looked at her. You ready? She nodded. More ready than ever. Sefu kicked the door open. It slammed into the wall with explosive force. Inside the chamber, an underground loading bay, Luleka spun around, eyes wide with shock. Two men beside her raised guns instinctively. Sefu fired first. One man dropped. Lawazi hit the second. Panic flashed across Luleka's face. She lunged for a case on the table, papers spilling across the floor. Stop, Nadira shouted. Luleka froze. She stared at Nadira, then at the boy, then at Kamari, bleeding but standing strong beside her. You, Luleka spat. You ruined everything. You stole my son, Nadira growled. You stole children. You lied, manipulated, hurt families. It ends now. Luleka laughed, a short, hysterical sound. Ends, oh sweet mother, this never ends. You're fools if you think you can stop this. Kamari raised his gun. Try me. But Nadira stepped forward, voice shaking with emotion deeper than rage. You took my child, she whispered. And for 3 years, every night, I died a little. And you slept comfortably in a warm bed. No more. Luleka's eyes narrowed. Her gaze flicked to the boy. She smirked. He remembers nothing. He is nothing. Just merchandise. Nadira saw red. Before Luleka could move, Nadira lunged, slamming her against the wall. They crashed to the ground, fighting viciously. Luleka clawed at Nadira's hair, striking wildly. Nadira struck back, fueled by years of pain. You took my son, she screamed. Lulika lunged for a gun on the floor. Kamari fired. The bullet struck her hand. She cried out in agony. Seifu pinned her down instantly, wrenching her arms behind her back. Lulika screamed and thrashed, but it was over. She was done. Kamari exhaled, lowering his gun. "We have what we came for," he said. "Let's get out before the rest return." But as Nadira picked up her son in the remaining files, she heard it. Distant footsteps, many of them. The network was coming, and the tunnels were closing. They had the evidence. They had the truth. But they weren't safe yet. "Move," Kamari shouted, and they ran into the unknown. Chaos thundered behind them. Dozens of footsteps surged through the lower tunnels, a tide of fury and desperation. The shouts blended into a single terrifying roar that bounced off the concrete walls like a stampede. Nadira tightened her grip around her son and sprinted, her lungs burning, her body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. Kamari ran beside her, limping heavily but refusing to slow. Seifu dragged the captured and handcuffed Luleka by the arms, forcing her forward. Luwazi remained at the rear gun, raised, firing warning shots into the darkness whenever shadows drew too close. The air thickened with dust, sweat, and fear. "This way," Seifu shouted, pulling them into a side passage. The tunnel sloped upward, narrower and rougher, reinforced by aging wooden beams. "What is this place?" Nadira gasped. "An old storm drain system," Kamari answered between breaths. "It connects to the outskirts of the city." "Will it get us out?" Nadira asked, voice trembling. Kamari hesitated. "If it hasn't collapsed," her heart stuttered. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder. Closer. "There," Luwazi called out, pointing his flashlight at a metal ladder bolted to the wall. It stretched upward into darkness, disappearing into a circular shaft. "A maintenance exit," Seifu said. "Go." Nadira grabbed the ladder first. She lifted her son, whispering, "Hold tight to me, sweetheart. Don't look down." He wrapped his arms around her neck as she climbed, her muscles trembling from strain. Each rung felt heavier than the last. Dust drifted down from above, stinging her eyes. Her breath came in ragged sobs, but she didn't stop. Below, Lulika snarled, "Let me go. You don't know what you're doing. They'll kill all of you." Seifu shoved her forward. "Keep climbing. They'll hunt you," she screamed. "You think this ends with me? You think I'm the worst of them?" Nadira felt her son tremble against her chest. She shut her eyes tightly and kept climbing. When she reached the top, she shoved hard against a metal hatch. It didn't move. Kamari climbed up beside her, blood dripping from his shirt. "Move aside." He braced himself and slammed his shoulder against the hatch. Nothing. Again, still nothing. Below, the footsteps multiplied. Voices growled, "They're above us. Move." Nadira's pulse roared in her ears. Kamari drew in a breath, ignoring the pain, and slammed upward with everything he had left. The hatch burst open. A flood of cool night air rushed into the shaft. Nadira nearly sobbed with relief. Above was an abandoned lot on the city's edge, overgrown grass, rusted fencing, broken concrete slabs. It wasn't safety, but it was freedom. Kamari dragged himself out, then reached down to pull Nadira and the boy behind him. Seifu forced Luleka through the opening next, then climbed out with Luwazi covering their retreat. But the reprieve was brief. A gunshot cracked from the tunnel below. Then another. A bullet ricocheted off the hatch frame. "They're climbing," Luwazi barked. Seifu slammed the hatch shut and dragged a concrete block over it. "We need distance now." Nadira stumbled across the empty lot, clutching her son. Every direction looked dark, empty, unfamiliar. The night felt alive with threats. "Where do we go?" she whispered, chest tightening. Kamari scanned the horizon, catching his breath. "There's a safe house 2 kilometers east," he said. "If we reach it, we can transmit the evidence." Lulika, now sitting in the dirt with her hands bound, laughed bitterly. "Transmit what you like. They'll burn the city before they let you expose them." Seifu gagged her with a torn scrap of cloth. "Enough." Kamari motioned forward. "Stay behind me. Move quickly. Stay low." They ran. The outskirts of the city were a maze of abandoned streets and silent warehouses, shadows stretching at every turn. Nadira's legs shook beneath her, but she kept moving, wholly powered by the warmth of her son's body pressed to her. Her son whispered, "Mama, are we almost safe?" Her voice trembled. "Soon, baby. Very soon." But she didn't believe her own words. Halfway across a cracked roadway, Kamari suddenly halted, raising his hand. Seifu and Luwazi froze. Nadira felt her stomach drop. "What is it, lights?" "Headlights." 3 black SUVs rolled into view from the far end of the street, the same kind that had chased them earlier. Kamari's face drained of color. "They're here." Seifu pushed Nadira behind a broken wall. "Down. Don't move." The SUVs stopped, doors opened. Armed men poured out like ants from a nest. Nadira hugged her son so tightly he whimpered, but she couldn't loosen her grip. She couldn't risk him slipping away, not even an inch. Luwazi whispered, "If they fan out, they'll find us." "They won't," Kamari said quietly. "We move west. There's an alley." Sefu nodded. "Go, I'll cover." "You're injured," Nadira protested. "So are they," Sefu replied. "I can buy you time. Now go." Before she could argue, a gunshot tore through the night. The enemy had spotted movement. "Run," Kamari screamed. They sprinted across the cracked pavement. Bullets sparked off concrete around them. Nadira shielded her son with her body ducking behind abandoned cars and dumpsters as Kamari and Luwazi fired back. An enemy gunman shouted, "Get the boy! Don't let the mother escape!" Nadira's blood froze. She ran harder. Her breath tore from her lungs. Her legs shook violently. But she refused to stop. She would die before they touched her son again. They turned into an alley between two derelict warehouses. Rusted fire escapes creaked overhead. Shadows curled in the corners like waiting predators. Nadira stumbled. Kamari caught her. "Almost there. Keep going." But when they reached the far exit of the alley, a figure stepped into view. Tall, broad-shouldered, holding a flashlight and a gun. Nadira gasped. She thought it was another trafficker. But then the man raised his palm. "Don't shoot," he said quickly. "I'm police CID." Hope flared in Nadira's chest, only to falter instantly. "Prove it," Kamari growled. Before the man could answer, more figures appeared behind him, uniformed officers, weapons drawn. Their badges glinted in the dim light. Kamari lowered his gun slightly. "Are you really CID?" The lead officer nodded. "Special unit. We received an anonymous tip a few hours ago, evidence of a trafficking ring led from this orphanage." Kamari blinked. "Anonymous tip," Luwazi murmured. "Who?" Nadira clutched her son as a dawning realization washed over her. Her father. His old files. Could something he left behind have triggered this, or had someone unexpected been helping them all along? Before she could answer her own question, the officer stepped closer. "Are you Nadira?" he asked. She nodded shakily. "Yes." He exhaled a long, relieved breath. "You're the one we were told to find, and your son." Nadira felt her throat tighten. You know who he is." "Yes," the officer said gently. "And we know who took him." Tears blurred Nadira's vision. "We're here to protect you," the officer said. "All of you. The safe house is waiting. Evidence teams are en route." Kamari staggered forward. "We have the documents, her files, everything." "Good," the officer said. "The entire network goes down tonight." Behind them, more gunfire erupted in the distance, Sefu still covering their rear. Nadira choked out. "Sefu, we'll send men for him," the officer said. "But we have to get you out of shooting range now." Nadira nodded, tears streaming, holding her son tightly. As the police escorted them toward waiting armored vehicles, the boy whispered, "Mama, are we safe now?" Nadira pressed her forehead to his. For the first time, she whispered, voice breaking, "I think we are." But even as she said the words, she knew the final reckoning had yet to come. Miss Lulika wasn't finished fighting, and neither was Nadira. Blue and red lights washed across the abandoned lot as the CID convoy sped away from the scene. Nadira sat inside the armored vehicle, gripping her son against her chest while officers surrounded them in a protective shell. Her heartbeat was still uneven, scattered from the chase, from the gunfire, from the near-death terror she had tasted again and again tonight. Her son's breathing was soft now, exhausted, uneven, but no longer panicked. His fingers curled into her shirt, clinging to her like she was the only anchor left in his world. Nadira pressed her cheek to the top of his head and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. Kamari was in the vehicle ahead, receiving medical treatment from paramedics. Luwazi rode in the rear convoy vehicle, silently scanning the perimeter through every window. And what of Sefu? Nadira's heart tensed. Sifu stayed behind, she whispered to herself, guilt welling in her chest. He stayed to cover us, to buy us time. The officer beside her, Inspector Mbeki, met her gaze in the dim light. "We've dispatched 2 units to retrieve him," he said. "We have reason to believe he's alive. He's trained, and he held them off long enough for us to reach you." Nadira closed her eyes, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Please, bring him back." "We will," the inspector replied quietly. "Tonight we bring back all of them. Alive if possible, if not, justice." The convoy turned sharply, leaving the industrial outskirts behind and re-entering the city through an unmarked service road. Additional police units stationed along the route signaled safe passage. They were surrounded, guarded, protected. For the first time in 3 years, Nadira allowed herself to breathe fully. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "To a government facility outside town," Inspector Mbeki answered. "High security, isolated. No one can reach you there. While our digital forensics team analyzes your files and prepares the warrants, you'll be given protection." "The evidence," Nadira murmured, tightening her arms around her son. "Everything we found in the orphanage, does it prove what they did?" "More than enough," Mbeki replied. "And with the files you scanned and the documents Kamari brought, we've uncovered a decade-long conspiracy. They thought they could hide forever." Nadira's jaw tightened. "They hid him. They hid my son. For 3 years." The inspector nodded sympathy, softening his stern features. "And now the truth will come to light because you refuse to stop looking." Nadira let out a shuddering breath. "I couldn't. I felt like my soul was missing something. Now I know it was him." The boy stirred slightly, lifting his head. His eyes were heavy, but his voice was clear and small. "Mama!" "Yes, sweetheart. Are we going home now?" Her heart clenched. "Soon. Very soon. First, we need to talk to some kind people who want to make sure the bad ones can never hurt anyone again." He nodded sleepily. "You'll stay with me," Mama. Nadira kissed his forehead. "Always." The convoy drove another 20 minutes before entering a remote government compound. High fences, guards with rifles, cameras on every corner, powerful floodlights bathed the courtyard in harsh white beams. But Nadira welcomed the security. Once inside, the main building, officers led them to a secure briefing room. Kamari, bandaged but conscious, was seated at the table, with a medic standing nearby. Lovazi had already been debriefed and was now staring at a digital map on the wall, tracking active pursuit teams still sweeping the orphanage tunnels. Nadira sat with her son on her lap. She didn't dare let go. Kamari looked up, offering a tired smile. "You made it. You too," Nadira breathed. "I thought she couldn't finish." Kamari nodded as if he already knew. As operations officers moved around the room, pulling data from flash drives and scanning documents under bright lamps, Nadira caught snippets of their discussions. Encrypted logs, she was funneling money offshore. Multiple adoption scams linked to the same account. Children listed under false identities. This network spans 4 countries. "We have enough to make arrests before dawn." Finally, Inspector Mbeki returned. He placed a thick folder on the table and looked directly at Nadira. "We have enough evidence to raid every property connected to the network. And warrants are being issued for dozens of arrests, including senior officials who helped cover up the original kidnapping." Nadira went cold. Officials, Mbeki nodded. "Some from the hospital. Some from the social welfare department." He paused. "Some from law enforcement." Nadira felt nausea swirl in her stomach. "So many people knew. They didn't know," Mbeki corrected. "They profited." Her hands trembled. "But thanks to you," he continued, "this ends tonight." Before Nadira could respond, the door burst open. A younger officer rushed in, breathless. "Sir, we found another child, alive." Everyone froze. Nadira sucked in a sharp breath. "Where?" "In the tunnels. A boy about 8 or 9. Malnourished, but responsive. Says he's been there for weeks." Lawazi cursed under his breath. "Those tunnels. God knows how many more." A second officer ran in. "Sir, update from the raid team. We found a secluded compound outside the city. Multiple children recovered. And a list." "A list," Mbeki's eyes sharpened. The officer nodded. "Hundreds of names. Children taken over 12 years. Silence fell like a wave. Nadira felt her son tremble, not fully understanding but sensing the heaviness in the room. She pulled him closer, fighting back tears. Kamari's face darkened. "We should have stopped her sooner." "You stopped her now," Nadira said softly, "and saved many." Her voice was raw, but true. Suddenly a third officer entered. "Sir, we found him." Mbeki frowned. "Found who, Sifu?" Nadira jolted. "Sifu? Is he?" "He's alive," the officer said quickly. Her knees nearly buckled with relief. "He's injured," the officer continued, "but conscious. He managed to call for backup before he collapsed. A medical team is retrieving him now." Nadira pressed a hand to her heart, whispering, "Thank you." The room exhaled collectively. Then the officer added, "He had something with him. A phone with a recorded message." "A message?" Kamari asked. The officer nodded and handed the device to Inspector Mbeki. "It's from Miss Lulika," the officer said. sent before we reached you. Nadira stiffened. What does it say? And Becky pressed play. Lulika's voice crackled through the speaker, cold, bitter, furious. You may think you've won, but exposing me won't save you. This network is bigger than you know, and the ones above me, they don't forgive failure. They don't forget betrayal. You took everything from them tonight, and they will come for you, every last one of you. The message ended. A tense silence settled over the room. Becky finally spoke. She's trying to frighten us. The truth is, once we get the warrants through and freeze the accounts, this network will crumble. Criminals rely on secrecy and speed. You took both from them. Nadira nodded faintly, though the chill remained along her spine. But then her son tugged at her sleeve. Mama, the bad lady is gone now, right? Nadira looked into his big brown eyes. Eyes she had thought she'd never see again. Eyes she promised to protect. She held his cheeks gently and whispered, Yes, baby, she's gone. And no one is ever taking you away again. His body relaxed against her trust, pouring from him like warmth. And in that moment, amid the chaos, the danger, the threat still lingering, Nadira felt something she hadn't felt in 3 long years. Hope. The beginning of healing. The return of a future she thought she'd lost. Kamari watched her quietly. You fought for him, he said softly, more fiercely than anyone I've ever seen. Nadira smiled through tears. I'm his mother. I would have fought the whole world, Kamari nodded. Tomorrow, the world will know the truth. She pressed her forehead to her son's. No, she whispered. Tonight, my world is right here. And for the first time since losing him, her world was whole again. Sometimes the greatest battles are not the ones we fight with fists, but the ones we fight with faith. Faith that the truth will rise. Faith that love can bridge even the darkest years. Faith that no matter how long the night lasts, the morning will come. Nadira's journey reminds us that a mother's heart is a force that darkness can never extinguish. She refused to surrender to grief, refused to accept a lie simply because it was easy, and refused to stop searching even when hope felt impossible. In life, we may face shadows that seem too big, too powerful, too cruel, but courage is born the moment we say, I will not give up. And love, especially the love between a parent and child, can break chains no one else sees. If this story touched your heart, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if you want more powerful African tales filled with courage, love, and redemption, consider subscribing.